Coming up next, we'll talk more about the transition to Josh Hoover as a quarterback. He can actually help this team in some aspects, specifically the vertical passing game. Could the defense be more aggressive and carry the team? Matt Jennings is with us. He'll break it all down with me next. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yep, Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. Sorry for the serial killer lighting that I have going on. I didn't like the glare that I had in the brighter lighting, and so I think what I have going now is called soft lighting. I feel like that's a thing that people use. That's a description that people use. But it looks kind of dark. So one day I'll figure out how to do a YouTube video, maybe in my fifth year that I do this podcast. Next to me is Matt Jennings. You can find him on Twitter at Matt A. Jennings, who's a freelance writer who covers TCU football. Matt, welcome to the Josh Hoover era, the Josh Hoover experience. How are you feeling about this crazy transition here in the middle of the
year? We're here. We're part of this now.
Yep. No turning back, baby. Okay, so I guess my first question is the short-term question. What did you see from Josh in the brief appearance against Iowa State? How do you feel like if it does work, what do you think the path is for this team to be successful with his whatever playing time he gets over the next few weeks?
Yeah. Let's start with the positive. After the first two drives that he came in for went about as poorly as you could expect. He looked solid for the rest of the game. Was accurate with the ball, made good decisions. I only spotted like one decision where I was like, that made me uneasy, and that was actually the fourth down where it looked like he was kind of into double coverage, and Thompson just like climbs the ladder, makes a good play, and good on him. Other than that, made good decisions, was accurate and decisive with the ball, showed some ability to escape the pocket. Would have had 2 touchdown passes if Corey Wren doesn't drop one. Looked solid, and then didn't get a chance to maybe get a third, quite frankly, because they took the ball out of his hands and decided to do a wide receiver pass with J.P. Richardson, which that's scoring territory execution, which is its own whole other conversation that we are going to just have in perpetuity now. It's just the existence that we have. But yeah, I think he looked good. I think some of that is Iowa State was up by 3 possessions at one point and did not have to do anything crazy. Just was playing conservative, right? And they obviously clearly did not prep for him either. So as he gets more reps, I don't think it'll really affect BYU since they only have a quarter and a half of film to go off of. But I'll be curious to see what the game plan is that they built. Sonny Dykes talked about that on Tuesday, figuring out what Josh Hoover likes and what he's comfortable with, and then building a game plan around that. That's what he said they're going to be doing in practice this week. So I'll be curious to see what that game plan looks like. But with all those caveats and the circumstances that he got asked to, once he settled down, looked totally fine. I'll be very curious to see how much that holds up and what they feel like they can do with him at the helm. He didn't give you any reason, again, once he settled down, didn't give you any reason to feel like this is going to be an abject disaster. It could be, but you didn't think that was a foregone conclusion after Saturday. So
I want to talk long-term for a second. I've said this a couple times this week. I really do think this is a huge opportunity for him. I don't feel like the coaching staff would say this, but as an outsider, it feels like Josh is the guy in the quarterback room that could get lost in the shuffle in the next few years, depending on what Chandler decides to do and depending on what happens with Haas Haney. But I guess two-parter. One, do you think Chandler could be back next season? Because I feel like it's very strange. He had a bad 2 games. Now he has another knee injury. He's been in college for a long time. he could come back this season, maybe not. And then, like, if Hoover plays well, how does that sort of change the calculus for this team moving forward? Because I doubt they want to put Haas in as a true freshman. And so you're going to need somebody to sort of keep the seat warm and hopefully excel while he's learning. I think there's just a lot of different ways to skill with the quarterback room over the next few months.
To your first question about Chandler Morris, I do find myself thinking about that because one, quarterbacks transfer, whether it's in the December window or the post spring practice window, like that is something that everybody has to deal with, right? Like if you don't think if you think you can start somewhere and you're not starting where you're at, like guys move, right? And so Haas Haney's going to be an early enrollee. He'll be here in the spring. And Josh Hoover, he plays lights out over the next 6 games, then maybe that changes Chandler's calculus a little bit. I do think regardless, I think we're already doing a little bit of revisionist history with Chandler Morris because people are acting like he was like a problem in the offense or like he was not good. Like he's a gunslinger. We understand that. He's going to make some decisions that are probably a little bit too aggressive. That's part of who he is. It's part of his DNA. But he was really solid through the first 4.5 games, put up good numbers, was efficient. Quite honestly, bailed them out of a lot of bad scenarios with his legs and his ability to improvise. If I thought he was solid. He's also not a good fit for what TCU's offensive identity is right now with this scheme, with this play caller. He's just not. He would be an ideal fit, I think, in like a traditional air raid offense, which is like, let's throw the ball 45 to 50 times a game. We're totally comfortable dinking and dunking down the field. We're asking a quarterback to play with timing, play with accuracy, play with anticipation. He can be all those things, right? Mm-hmm. The one thing that he doesn't bring to the game is the vertical passing game. And that's like one of the defining traits of the kind of scheme that Kendall Briles wants to run. It just is. And Kendall Briles has not shown himself to be super willing to adjust what he wants to do, right? And so, like, then you're just kind of up a creek because if you can't pass protect and you can't throw deep and you're not doing a great job in run blocking, then you end up with the offense that TCU has right now, which is one that's struggling for an identity, right? And so I think Chandler Morris could come back next year. This is a long-winded answer to. I think Chandler Morris could come back next year and could come back later this season. I'm not necessarily advocating for that. I think he should rest up and get healthy, but could come back and be successful. I also think he could be successful in a lot of places. I don't think his college career is over, is the short version. I am curious. He transferred to TCU, and I believe it was the first season that they had gotten rid of the 1-year penalty so he was immediately eligible when he was on campus in 2021, which is part of the reason why he was able to play like in the Baylor game, right? And have that great game. This would be his second transfer if he did decide to transfer, which like we're not reporting on that, to be clear. Like this is all speculation.
It's all speculation, yeah.
But if he were to decide to transfer, I don't know if he's a grad transfer, then it's a moot. If he was not a grad transfer, which I don't know his academic status, and he were transferring again, I don't believe he'd be eligible to play immediately if I'm understanding the NCAA rules as they stand now correctly, right? And so that's another thing to like. Quite frankly, I don't know the answer to. So someone would need to dig on that.
Yeah, and he also had that really weird thing with Lincoln because Lincoln didn't want to sign off on him being available, but then he was. This is the last thing I'll say about. No, that's actually not true. Probably not the last thing I'll ever say about this. I've somehow like gotten labeled as someone who's like trying to go to bat for Chandler Morris. That's not what I'm doing. I just feel like a lot of people have already closed the book on him at TCU, and I'm kind of like, well, one, we don't know what Josh Hoover is going to do. I hope he's great. Like I do. Like I hope that he's a really good quarterback and that he does some things that we haven't seen. But I don't know that's going to be the case. And if this team is still fighting for bowl eligibility, when and if Chandler's healthy, I mean, I could see a scenario where they say, all right, let's go back to him and see what he's got. Also, to your point, I mean, I think he played okay for the first, 4 games of the season.
He looked really good. If the way he played in the first half of the West Virginia game had been carried over through the next game and a half, we'd be talking about, they'd be sitting there at 5-1, and you'd be feeling really good about where you're at. It's just that the offense has really, really imploded over the last game and a half. That's really kind of, I think, changed the complexion of the conversation. And some of that is on Chandler with making some bad decisions with the football, and some of that's the fact that he's getting very, very little help. And you're hoping when you put Josh Hoover in there, you better get him some help. Otherwise, it could very well be worse.
Yeah, that's the thing that I was trying to get across is just like he has been bad the last 2 games. But aside from Monty Bailey, you have to basically put this entire offense in Rice for the last 2 games. Like they have been just bad across the board. And also, not really to what we were talking about, but like I really think Sonny has failed here in that you had 2 winnable games. Like you got beat by Iowa State. I know the efficiency numbers didn't really show it, but you got beat by Iowa State. Colorado and West Virginia were winnable football games. You blew those games. Now you're 3-3 instead of 5-1. And now you're having to ask a backup quarterback who's never played before to go win you 3 out of your last 6 games potentially, which is a really hard thing for anybody to do. And it's the situation you put yourself in, and that's just really frustrating. But back to Hoover for a second. Matt texted me today and he said, I've watched Josh Hoover's huddle film, and
this is where we're at. No. Like, let's just pause for a second. This is where we're at in the TCU season, where we're texting each other with the preface. So I was watching Josh Hoover's huddle,
right?
And like this is like that's not a sentence that any sane person should have to. That we didn't think we'd be texting to each other at 6 weeks in.
Yes, that's where we're at. You're texting me that. Somebody tweeted at me today, and somebody tweeted at you as well. And this is no disrespect. I'm sure Grant Tisdale is a wonderful person. But somebody tweeted at me that Grant Tisdale was formerly a 4-star recruit, which is a very true thing. That was back in 2018, which my sources tell me was a long time ago. But that's where we're at with this quarterback room at the moment. Anyway, if you saw some Josh Hoover highlights at Rockwall Heath, he ran a variation of this offense, and it was a very vertical, heavy passing game that they ran. So that has not been an aspect of this offense that's been available to them or that they've used. Could he open something up there that would allow the boxes to get lighter in the running game to get to a better place now,
Matt? That's
the $1 million question,
right? I don't pretend to be a skilled quarterback evaluator or a quarterback evaluator at all, just to be able to understand whether or not what he was doing at Rockwall Heath would translate. But I will say, like, that's what's on his film is a whole lot of attacking defenses vertically and doing a good job with it, hitting receivers in stride. If they can open up that dimension of the offense, I think it changes the vibe of what they can and are able to do, right? The question is, does it translate? He's playing 6A ball. He's not playing against nobodies,
he's playing good competition.
He's playing good competition, but does the speed of his receivers and the defenders he was thrown against in high school and his ability to make the plays in that context translate to making those plays in the Big 12? He certainly has the arm strength, and we're seeing the potential of the accuracy and the ball placement downfield. So that's good. And he didn't get a lot of chances to do that on Saturday against Iowa State, but in the few instances, like, he wasn't just throwing checkdowns. Like he tossed up for Warren Thompson, not a super advised pass in my opinion, but then he did have the really nice completion to Dalen Wright. Yeah. Like he was finding guys downfield. If they can do that, then things are different for this offense, 100%. I have no idea if he can do that on Saturday against BYU or when they get into, a game against Oklahoma or Texas, defenses that we think are pretty darn good later on this year. But as I said, like, that's really the thing where you couldn't do that with Chandler Morris. And I think a different offense or a different coordinator would have made it work with him in that situation. If Josh Hoover unlocks that for you, I think then suddenly Kendall Briles feels like he can run the offense the way that he wants to and feels and have the identity that they want to. And also, just to your point, it makes things easier on the running game too, because teams they've been loading the box against Amani Bailey. Amani Bailey still had success running the ball despite that, but they've been loading the box and just, daring TCU to win those one-on-one matchups. And they had success at that for most of the first 4 games, and then it fell apart over the last 2. And if you can force defenses to adjust and not defend you that way, then maybe you do have something. But that is a massive if that you are placing on a backup quarterback who's a 3-star recruit coming out of high school. And also, it also means he's your only scholarship. Like, you are one bad snap away from Grant Tisdale season, or trying to run like a wildcat, like option power thing, like what Baylor did in 2015 with Chris Johnson,
No, you're totally right. I have some thoughts on that as well. Before I do that, though, I do want to talk about one of our sponsors. Jase Medical is who I want to chat with you about right now. Jase Medical, nobody wants to be in a bad situation, a bad medical emergency where you can't get to, care immediately. You want to be prepared for those situations. So what you can do is you can get a Jase case from Jase Medical. You see the website there, jasemedical.com. You can get $20 off if you use the promo code LOCKEDON. Again, $20 off if you use the promo code LOCKEDON. 5 life-saving antibiotics. They also have physicians that are available, so you can call, make sure you're doing the right things. You're applying these medications properly. All those things are available. jasemedical.com. Use the promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off their Jase case product. Yeah, so I watched that highlight film too, and one thing I noticed was there were a lot of deep throws. There was also a lot of take the snap, 1 step, maybe 2 steps, and it's one read. It's fade to the outside, right, or hitting somebody in a button hook, which is kind of what I thought this offense was going to be going in the year, and it's been a little different than that. But I'm really happy that you brought up. I have 2 points. One is this offensive line has struggled. And so that has to get better. They shuffled some guys around. They moved Coleman back to tackle. They got Coleman and Coker back at their normal spots again. And it seemed like that helped. But I'm expecting to see a lot of blitzes and pressure-heavy defenses that are going to try to get Hoover uncomfortable. Matt was talking about, I believe it was like the Champ Sports Bowl against North Carolina. So in 2015, Baylor had all these quarterback injuries. Chris Johnson started that crazy game on Black Friday that I know some of you guys were at, where it was just raining and miserably cold, and TCU won that football game. And then Chris Johnson got hurt too. And Chris Johnson was their 3rd string quarterback. Baylor literally didn't have a QB going to that ball game. And so they went to this wildcat thing with Johnny Jefferson, one of their running backs, and they just ran the ball like crazy for 400-something yards and won that football game. And I think a lot of people, that's probably, if you're talking about Kendall Briles, that's probably one of the best games that he ever called. He found a way in a really tough situation to get it done. I want to see something like that. It's not going to be that dire of a situation, but you have a backup quarterback. I agree with you. I think he's stuck with what he wants to do, and he hasn't really adjusted the personnel. Sonny Dykes and him both have to figure out a way to make this work. You guys are offensive gurus. This is what you're supposed to do. Go do it. Find a way to give this quarterback, the young QB, easy reads, easy plays, and let's make it happen. One other thing that people have brought up this week, the vibes around this team. I don't think they've quit. I don't see a group that's just thrown in the towel yet. Sometimes you can see a group rally around an adverse situation like this. Do you feel like we're going to kind of get to see the toughness and mettle that we saw last year, or lack thereof, that has kind of defined this team so far this year?
To have that happen, first off, I'll agree. I don't the way they were like trying to make it work down the stretch, even in garbage time against Iowa State, was, I think, an encouraging thing. They were moving the ball. They obviously, had 2 red zone possessions where they come up empty, but those guys were out there clearly showing an effort. Amani Bailey's out there churning out yards. His Josh Hoover's receivers are making plays for him. All good stuff, right? So I agree with you. This does not seem like a team that has deflated or wilted, right? They look like a team that's frustrated, but they don't look like a team that has quit, which is good. And to your point, like adverse situations, like I'm thinking of Chandler Morris's first start at TCU, right? Like where, first game after Gary Pat of the Jerry Kill era at TCU, and they come out against their rival and come out with a game plan that fits their personnel, and they get after it, and they get a big upset win, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could see a similar thing happen in this. I think to your point, like, do they have the mettle? Do they have the mental toughness? It's the same thing we've been saying all year. So much of what gave them that a year ago was that veteran leadership and that they had on last year's squad. And so much of that's gone. They need somebody to step up in that regard. Is that, on defense, I think you've got more candidates for that. Like you've got Bud Clark back there. You've got Jamoy Hodge. You've got Josh Newton. You've got guys who have been around for and have played in big moments and made big plays in big moments. And you need those upperclassmen leaders to help rally the troops on offense. Because of all the new pieces, I don't know who that is. Is it Amani Bailey? Is it Coker and Coleman? Right? Or is it a Savion Williams or a Jared Wiley? They need somebody to go out there and early on against BYU, go out there and make a huge play and get the vibes of the team on that side of the ball kind of back on track, get their confidence back. And if you can do that early for a young quarterback making his first start at home, it's homecoming, right?
Yeah, it's homecoming.
It's you can get it the way you want and feel better. And the good news for you is that this BYU team, their record is solid, but they've been a kind of a rickety team to this point as well. And I'm not sure their offense is in much better place than yours is. I said this on Twitter today, it could very well turn into a rock fight. I could very much see this being a 17-14 kind of a game if both defenses play well, just because if both offenses are so inconsistent. And if that's the case, then I think then you just need a couple guys to make a couple key plays in key moments, and you get yourself back to a winning record, and you get yourself back on track before you head into what is then the toughest part of your schedule. So,
yeah, it really is, which is not ideal. So the defense in this scenario is kind of fascinating to me because, yeah, maybe it's a rock fight, but honestly, Gary showed an ability, and he's a defensive coach, but he showed an ability and a willingness to be like, all right, y'all want to get in the slop? I'm a pig. Let's roll around, baby. I'm not scared of winning 9-6. I'm not scared of winning 3-2. I don't care. I'll punt on on your side of the field on 4th and 2. I'll pin you deep. And his credit, he won games like that. He won games with Grayson Muhlstein that were 16-9 or 7. I think what was the Cheez-It Bowl, 10-7, something like that. I don't know if this team is built to do that. I'm trying to think of the defense. I guess the Texas game last year.
Yeah.
But Matt, I think Joe Gillespie is going to have to be more aggressive because I don't feel like now you can be bend but don't break guy. You're gonna have to create negative plays. You have to force turnovers. You can't really allow many touchdowns. If BYU gets out to a 14-0 lead in this ball game because you're just trying to feel things out, good luck. That's not a recipe to win.
Yeah, they need. I agree with you. The Texas game is the best example of this, where they were really able to just manhandle Texas up front and get pressure on Quinn Ewers, and then they forced some turnovers and got positive field position, and they won that game 17-10, and one of those touchdowns for Texas. Texas's only touchdown in that game came on a scoop and score off of a Max Duggan fumble, right? Like they shut them down, right? You would love an effort like that, and to do that, you got to be able to win up front, which I think they have grown and gotten better at, and looked, or at least shown more promise there over the last few games, where you've seen them make the goal line stand against West Virginia, get some more pressure on the quarterbacks over the last couple of games. I'd like to see that. They've been more willing to blitz. I think two things to me. If you're gonna be able to do that, when you blitz, you got to get home. We saw it again. Rocco Becht was able to do the exact same thing that Garrett Green did the week before. They bring Jamoy Hodge on a blitz, I think on like an A-gap blitz, and he doesn't wrap up, which doesn't matter if he's still trapped in the pocket. But no one keeps contained, or no one even gets far enough upfield, and he just kind of drifts out of the pocket and then goes to make a play, right? You need a full group effort from the front six to make those plays work. So you got to get home when you do blitz and make those plays count. You can't allow them to turn those into positive plays. So that's the first thing if you're gonna to kind of get yourself in a positive game state kind of thing. The other thing, let Bud Clark loose, man. Like, tell Bud Clark, hey man, this week, or maybe even just for the rest of the season, like, we know he kind of does this on his own anyway, the ball hawking thing. Go after it, man.
Yeah,
and go and hunt the ball and go and do it, because he is your best opportunity to flip the field on this roster. And he does a phenomenal job at it. And you live with the plays where it means he gets beat on a double move because he's hunting something, and you give up a big play and you just deal with it, because you're hunting those chances to flip the field. You're hunting those chances to get your offense in a great position to get points. I think those, if they can do those things this week and just kind of going forward, you put your offense in a better position.
When we come back, I'll ask Matt about expectations and kind of best case scenario for this team. It's very different than when we started the season. We'll do that next on Lockdown Horned Frogs. Is your fantasy team a complete disaster at this point? Have you, like me, suffered injuries to Anthony Richardson? Not me personally. These people are actually injured. I shouldn't act like it's affecting me more than them. But Anthony Richardson and Justin Jefferson both went down. Suddenly, I'm scouring the waiver wire trying to find anyone that could serve as a third wide receiver. I have a great opportunity for you. PrizePicks. It's daily fantasy. So if your team is a disaster and your friends are, giving you crap for it, you can transition to a daily fantasy, games and opportunities like PrizePicks, where, listen, you can pick new teams all the time. You can do it as quickly as like 2 minutes. It doesn't take long at all. Just a couple taps and you'll have a lineup. There's all kind of prop bets on there. It's not just simply best ball or setting up a team for a certain day. There's all sorts of opportunities on PrizePicks. We're so happy that they're sponsors here of the Locked On Networks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege and use the code LockedOnCollege, and they'll match your first deposit up to $100. I'll say that again. PrizePicks.com/LockedOnCollege. They'll match that first deposit up to $100. That means if you put $100 down, they'll put $100 down. That's $200. That's the type of math that even a kid from McGregor can do, and a sports broadcasting major at TCU can do. And that's the kind of opportunities that PrizePicks allows us. PrizePicks, a proud sponsor of the Locked On Network. I don't know if they're proud about it. I'm just assuming that part, but I think they are. Okay, so I didn't think we'd be here. I really didn't. Like, I know during the offseason there were people that said, listen, they lost so much talent. This could be a team that goes 7-5. And I guess that was a possibility. But now we're staring a situation where I don't know if they can make a bowl game, which is really disappointing. But at this point, Matt, I know it's not going to make like the A block of College Game Day if they're able to do this. But if you get to 6-6 and you make the postseason, is that like the best case, saving face, keeping momentum going for this program moving forward?
As it stands right now, that's how it feels to me, because you've got. Here's the other thing. Here's the thing about this is part of the reason we all kind of collectively, I say we all, you and I certainly, were like, I mean, this feels like an 8-ish, 9-win team, but we could see them like making a run. And the main reason for that was like the rest of the league like didn't look. It was the same reason why everyone's picking Texas, is like, well, who else in the league is going to do anything? But that was to TCU's benefit, we thought, in the preseason as well. And to this point in the season, that's borne itself out. Like, it's Oklahoma and Texas, and West Virginia has quietly moved they're currently second place in the league. But like, Kansas State does not look as complete of a team as we thought they were going to, right? They lost a super perplexing game against Oklahoma State. Kansas looks really solid. You know, I would have them as kind of the next team. But then other than them, you know, Iowa State, you know, Saturday was probably their best outing. Baylor looks like they're in shambles right now. Texas Tech is a rebound after a tough start, but like they're still sitting here at 500 as well. All the newcomers are struggling in their early time in the league. You know, like it still feels very much like, you know, spots 3 through 5 are very up for grabs in the league. And knowing Texas, quite frankly, like just knowing the DNA of that program, it's not a given that they don't like crumble after losing in Red River.
I mean, they could drop another game. Right. They could drop one more game.
So all that as stage setting, I'm not picking TCU to like go on a run here.
Yeah.
I'm not even picking them to make a bowl game right now, just based on what I've seen thus far. I think a 5-7 season is absolutely in the cards and probably likely. The thing that works in their favor, though, is that like who on their schedule, other than Texas and Oklahoma right now, looks like super intimidating or like they have it all together? Nobody, right? Yeah. Like BYU this week. That's a game that I could see TCU losing. It's also a game that I could see TCU winning. Same with Kansas State, same with Baylor, same with Texas Tech, right? Like those are 4 games that you're like, well, I don't feel great about either team. So sure, why somebody's got to win those 4 games, right? And so, you know, that's kind of the most optimistic picture that I can paint at the moment. Now, again, this all changes if like Josh Hoover unlocks something in the offense that it didn't have before. Which again, I'm not picking, but we didn't think Max Duggan was going to do that with TCU a year ago either, right? So this feels like a team that's scrapping for bowl eligibility to me toward the end of the season, and I do think that's an accomplishment given how the season has started. Because if you go 3-3 in the easy part of your schedule, and then you manage to go 3-3 again in the harder part of your schedule, that's a reason for feeling good just based on the adversity that you faced at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think this game's really important. If you can get the BYU game, and then you hope you beat Baylor at home, and Tech on the road is going to be tough, but that's not an amazing team right now. And even K-State looks kind of vulnerable. I'm not hopeful about that because it's on the road, and I think that's a tough matchup for them. Like, K-State just doesn't seem like a team that's going to lose to a backup quarterback, even though they lost Alan Bowman, last week. But
when's the last time, and I know this goes back to the Garrett Patterson era, so like it may be apples and oranges. When's the last time TCU lost in Lubbock though? Wasn't it like 2013?
It's been a while.
They won in 2015 in the Aaron Green tipped catch. 2017 they won with Sean Robinson. 2019 was Max Duggan's first year. And then 2021 they won.
Or they won in 2020. They played them in the they won in 2021. You're right.
In 2021, and they ran for like 300 yards with Zach Evans and Kendrick Miller.
Yeah.
So like you could take that one of two ways. You could be like, man, Tech is due to beat TCU at home. But I will say, like, to your point, like, I think we do have like a mystique around playing in Lubbock, especially if you're playing at night. But TCU has handled it pretty well, is my point, in recent outings.
Yeah, I think it's a winnable game. I guess my hang up with it is more that I think, as much as I poke fun at Texas Tech, I do think they have a competent coaching staff now for the first time in a long time, and they seem to be trending up instead of
And
trending down.
they have figured out what their identity is offensively over the last few weeks, which TCU has not. Right? Like they have figured out like, oh wait, we're gonna lean on Taj Brooks and like this is what we're gonna be. It sucks that they had to get to 1-3 to figure that out, but now they've figured it out, right? Whereas TCU is, as we've said all season, like it's kind of like, what are you guys? And so they got to figure that out. But yeah, so it's not a game that I think is a gimme. It's a tough road game, and they're going to be like super salty after the way last year's game went and everything like that. But it was just a note. Like I was like, yeah, man, they got to go play in Lubbock. That's hard. Wait, hold on. When's the last time they lost in Lubbock?
No, it's a good point. I mean, it's like how I didn't think Ames was going to be a tough situation this year because I felt like Iowa State didn't have a really good football team, and then they went and lost, and they haven't beaten Iowa State in Ames since 2015, I believe. And even that was a tough game, that 2015 game with probably the most talented TCU roster ever. So the great thing about college football, I never want to discourage anybody from being optimistic. I didn't think they would do what they did last year. I didn't think they'd lose to Colorado. I didn't think they'd be 3-3 right now. Maybe I'm just stupid and shouldn't do a podcast. Point being, we don't know what's going to happen. That's why we play the games. And so Josh Hoover starting this week. We'll have a better idea of what he looks like after this BYU game. Thank you to Matt Jennings. I'll be here to cover it either way. It's TCU. It's Locked on Horned Frogs. That's what they call it. Your team every day.